I haven't prepared anything, but I did want to talk to you guys about what we've been doing in the NATO project and sort of some of the support that we need um, going forward. And I guess some of the, I don't know, issues we've been faced with. Maybe we can sort of brainstorm and discuss these. So officially, the NATO project started at the end of September, and we have to do 6 monthly reporting. So the reporting for this grant is quite extensive. So we have a report coming up in March that we'll have to submit. And the goals of this first milestone or this first like 6 months of the project was to get a design for the digester created. And part of what we said in the grant was that we would, the the co-directors of the project would create kind of a one or more tentative design plans, and then we would share them with sort of an advisory group consisting of people from Chad who could provide feedback and additional comments, suggestions, and so on. So one thing we need to do is create that design group. And I know we had a design group and we made the initial designs of the digesters that are sitting up at NLR, as it's currently named. I think we can either think about reforming that design group or maybe creating a new design group and to advise the NATO project team on digester design issues. And so I think, Embrey, that's a great idea. If we could take part of this meeting for that, or we could also just do it as separate meetings. I think that's how it was done previously with the other digesters, but I mean, I think either is fine. I guess it would depend on who's going to be on the design team and what their availability is, because I know there's a lot of people within the chat group that aren't able often to come to these meetings because of the timing. But yeah, so I don't know.
Well,
Might be worth sending a call out to like the whole group, seeing who's interested and seeing who can actually come to these meetings.
I mean, for sure, Annie, like for sure the NREL team, right? I'm not going to volunteer anybody. I have some ideas. I've some people on this call right now, but
Yeah, I think there might be some people on this call who would be.
I would definitely love to. Oh, can I please do some design work and not project management work?
Amber, you can be the leader of the design group.
I think Annie should probably, Annie could be co-lead. But yeah, sure. I will, I'll send an email out to, I think the IRPIC emails are not as many as that are on this actual invite. So I'll send an email. See what's going on.
So I'm just thinking about how this is going to work. It sounds like, and I'm not sure I heard everything there, but emailing this entire group through IRPIC to say, we're having these design group meetings. Why don't I do this? I will draft a little email for you, Jane, Margaret, and Embrey to say, this is what we're asking, some kind of a call for a design group. Is that what I see in the comments there? And then whoever responds. And I think the way to do it is to actually, do we set up a meeting? Yes, I guess we have to invite people to a meeting. So we could send out a meeting poll at the same time. I like the tool when to meet. That's the one I use. And then just see if we can get, 2 or 3 meetings set up. And I'll try, I think, to set them up so that some are European friendly and some are North America friendly meetings. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead, Embrey. Thoughts, modifications, suggestions, criticisms, rants?
Oh, I have many rants, but we'll put a pin in those. So I think what would be helpful is to have, we need to figure out who wants to be on the design team. We need to have a kickoff that is probably going to be a bit longer than, a normal kind of recurring meeting. So maybe an hour and a half to reorient everybody to the design and, start the topics sort of action items. And then after we get everybody's feet under them and after we get, people kind of the framework around which we're dealing with the design, then we might be able to have shorter meetings that are addended to these, right? Just because there's so many meetings that people have to go to, and this is already on people's calendar. Does that make sense to everybody? Just to have like a separate, like, hi, we're all in the design team for 2 hours. Here's what we're doing, da 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 da. And then we can have shorter check-in kind of meetings that are part of this group. Does that make sense to people?
I think this is why you're a project manager. You're good at managing projects. Ha ha ha.
So just to be clear, you're saying this design group meeting would not be our monthly meeting. It would be a separate thing, right?
The first meeting would be a separate meeting. And then this meeting, I mean, these recurring monthlies are an hour and a half. So maybe what we could do is take 45 minutes of these meetings for the design team.
Cool. Okay. That's fine by me. I mean, I love the idea, and I love that you're stepping up to structure it. Other thoughts? Okay.
I think that's
just
a good
one thing
strategy.
on the timeline. We need to get this design group up and going pretty quickly because we want to have the design finalized for like March probably, so that we can start thinking about procurement in April and actually have it built in by the end of May, because we need to start running it in either late May or early June.
Holy crap.
Yeah. It's pretty tight. So it's because the NATO project started a bit late. Like we didn't get the notification until much later than expected. So this timeline to the like startup is quite short. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I realize, I've run grants. I've been grantee and grantor. So there was just notification that never came. Can't you get an extension?
So the part of the problem is that because the digester runs seasonally, like we need to have it running in the summer.
Of course.
So it's more of like the seasonal timeline. That's the problem. NATO was fine with like starting the project late. They didn't have a problem with that, but it's like we need to get the digester started at the beginning of spring or at the beginning of, like Arctic summer. So we have currently sort of talked about 2 different designs, and I think that's in the chat there. So we have like the drum type digesters, which is what has already been built up at the NLR. And then there's these big type digesters that, people like Lily and Jaime and other Jaime also use a lot. And kind of building those in a way that would be appropriate for like a permafrost environment, like inside of a kind of hut or shed or something like that that's insulated. So those are the 2 kind of basic designs. So I think we already have sort of some ideas there. And I think based on the designs that have already been made, hopefully we can kind of make it a quick process.
Sorry, Jane, I'm realizing I am pretty checked out of this because I thought the NREL in Fairbanks is the only place that we were kind of doing that. Where would the one that you're talking about be located?
So this is something we have just started discussing yesterday, actually. There was no commitment to running this digester anywhere in the NATO grant. So there's no agreement with any location. So I think in a lot of ways it makes sense to run them at NLR. For my university to make a subgrant agreement a subcontract agreement with this an international. So it's actually mainly there's going to be an issue with NLR creating a relationship with an international institution. It's going to be very slow. It's going to take at least 6 months. So we've talked with Annie a bit about how we could kind of fill in the gaps before that potentially. And then we've also recently started to consider whether there's other locations where we could run digesters in Canada or potentially even Greenland. Just because it might be easier in terms of the subcontracts and stuff. Although, yeah, it makes sense to do it in NLR as well. So that's something we just had started discussing yesterday in our sort of project meeting. So if anybody has any tips or ideas about that, that would also be helpful.
Yeah, but like Nate, I'm a little bit surprised. So I kind of guessed that this was happening from some of the other emails that Jane you'd mentioned. You'd mentioned something, But what's happening to the Fairbanks digester then is that, in a sense, I always envisaged the NATO project now taking over or contributing to and adding to what was already happening at Fairbanks. So has that entire work stalled? And it
I
is.
think I might be the best person on the call to answer that, which is that we were all ready to go in May 2025. And all of a sudden, what was then the National Renewable Energy Lab surprised us with a demand for a whole extra chunk of money for contingency plan. Obviously, we tried to point out that the biohazard disaster they were envisioning was basically the same as having a clogged toilet inside the facility. But we just didn't have the cash to throw at their concern, and we did not manage to convince them their concern was ungrounded in time to start. And since then, the money that we had managed to store, I thought we had stored at the private lab in Fairbanks to do the analysis. That money turns out not to have left and was returned to the Treasury. So we are, in fact, behind where we were last May. The Office of Research and Development, where Max has been dissolved. He has been relocated to the Office of Water, which is not a bad place for him to be, but we have not gotten, for fiscal year 2026, any new research funds. EPA was funded in a this is way too detailed, I know, but like it's just sort of all the pieces that we're trying to track. We have gotten funded by Congress for the rest of this fiscal year. So, I'm going to be looking to see if there's any research funds in that. But it's been a confusing year, to say the least. And I don't currently have any great line on or hope for a new influx of research money. So, if the NATO project can do it, the National Renewable Energy Lab is set up to take funds from other sources. It doesn't have to be EPA, it can be other sources. And then I know that some folks were on and some folks were not. They did run the digesters with water only in 2025. So we have some interesting temperature data comparing the 4 digester setups. So we're not complete, we got a little bit of information, but anyway, that's where we are with the Fairbanks NREL EPA situation.
My thought was last year we were hoping that this NATO money would come through so that we could run it, and then basically we got to the deadline where we're not going to run this now because it's too behind schedule, and then sometime later we got the NATO money. So do we have capacity to use a portion of that to run what's already built at NREL?
Yeah, so in order to do that, we need to create the project needs to create a subcontract agreement with the National Lab of the Rockies, as they're now called. And because it's an international agreement, that will take at least 6 months. And so there are 4 digesters sitting up there waiting to be run. If you do the math, today we're January, 6 months from now is going to be after we would like to start the digesters. And there may be a way that we can sort of patchwork things ahead of that. But it's a bit, I don't know, dicey. And I think there's also by members of the project, there's also some concerns about security for sending students to the location to build and operate these digesters to some extent.
Concern. What are the concerns for students?
I think there's concerns about just sort of the
Traveling to the States?
essentially, yeah.
Okay.
And how that might affect them and what could happen. There may also be visa issues for people from Colombia, I think.
Alex, you have a hand raised?
Just to follow up on that, Jane, visa issues for people from Colombia to travel to the United States at all, or Alaska?
I think traveling to the US, I think there might be some concerns whether they would be allowed to travel to the US.
So I don't think you can work around that. I mean, if there's enough money in this budget, then it's possible to stand up that same set of equipment anywhere else and just redo it. I mean, you could even be whatever shipped. It sounds crazy, but you could just do it someplace like International Falls, Minnesota. It's nice and cold, and be in the United States. And I can probe my network in Wisconsin to find something that's in the northern part of Wisconsin up on the border, and just redo it there. That would mean that this international NATO would have to, who could international people NATO contract with that wouldn't take 6 months? In other words, it's not just about NRL, not just the NLR, it's about any US government entity. But could NATO do something more quickly with other kinds of entities, and what kinds of entities could NATO do something more quickly with? Or what kinds of entities would be willing to do something more quickly with NATO?
Yeah, so I think that the issue is actually that the sub-grant agreement needs to be between Simon Fraser University and the location, from what we've understood. So anything we do with the US would be an international agreement. So that's why I'm currently looking into a couple of possibilities in Canada. And Prunella is also looking into one in Canada.
Great.
And potentially in Greenland. Because if we can build an agreement within Canada, it should be something a little quicker, especially if the university already has an agreement I know that we have an agreement with the research station in Inuvik. There may be other locations that we can form faster agreements with. It will be a bit more complicated, just because we don't have digesters on site there. But I think if we can, I didn't think about shipping the reactors that are already in Alaska, but that's one possibility. But I think if the design is already there and solid, it's something we can also just build, especially if it's at a research station where they're used to having this kind of thing happen.
After visiting it in Fairbanks, I don't think that's something you can ship. The simplest things that you can ship are 55-gallon barrels and some wooden sheds. The solar panel array, the electrical, all the EI&C, that's already in place there, and you're basically you might as well just redo somewhere else with the design that's already built. But yeah.
I suspect that one of the motivations for the project, which tends to be not exactly ignored, but because we've often spoken about the science, we've often forgotten about the fact that the real motivation for some people in the group is the quick build, easily managed transportability. So in a sense, the opportunity to design and build anywhere rather than try and ship what we've already got is actually part of the agenda for the design team. So yes, we need to get on with that, but actually I think it's all about buildability, ease of the mechanics, the way in which we do it anywhere. I had an inquiry from a farm in Tromsø in Norway, stuff like that. It doesn't apply to this, but the point is that this is what we really need to be aiming for, something that can be quick built anywhere, and that really should now be from the beginning, I think, or from the restart, let's say. So it doesn't make sense to lift and shift what we've got from what you've said, Jane. I think we need to just help you get a new facility, a new unit underway as fast as we can.
Judith, do you have any ideas about places in the Susana or people in your Susana network who would be maybe able to host such a thing in Canada or Greenland? Just sort of thinking about possible partners for Jane in this installation, or anybody. Like, let's just feed Jane some ideas, right?
Well, for Greenland, I imagine, Pernilla, you must have already mentioned people in Sisimiut, the municipality, or no?
Pernille, who I think has dropped off the call in Greenland, is
I'm
the.
here still. I'm
Oh,
here still.
sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, you're not on
Yeah.
my list. I don't know. Sorry. You're the
Yeah.
obvious person.
Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about the contact persons in Greenland. Mostly, I've tried to open the discussion because about the usefulness of a system like this in Greenland. Because I think for us to make a successful project, we need to have the digester in a place where people will find it useful. I'm continue to discuss this because I don't know how to convince people that this would be useful in Greenland because I don't necessarily understand myself how it could be.
You mean the digester specifically, or the fact that we're treating waste and they just, oh, okay, dump it.
The concept of anaerobic digestion for small communities in Greenland.
Well, I mean, if it works, it's better than dumping it where you fish.
Not necessarily,
Why not?
because we would still have to dump the digestate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but isn't that
And-
less
and-
volume? Or...
But there's no really problem with dumping the black water currently.
Well, there's at least one village where they were complaining that they fish around the village and they don't want to dump it in the sea. In that spot.
Which one was that?
Stafangwit.
Yeah, but I don't dump it in the sea currently.
No, I know, but they're not
Yeah,
supposed to put it on land, so it
No,
could be.
no. Yeah. No.
Because when it comes out of the digester, it's hygienized, yes, to some extent.
That's something we're going to
Yeah,
measure.
to some extent, yeah, yeah. But we are doing this analysis of the hygiene, the bacteria in the waters around these places, and the water quality is really very good. I mean, it's according to Danish regulation, excellent bathing quality, even just 10 meters from the discharge point. So I think we are somehow, we're saying in Danish, shooting very small birds with big cannons here. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, to put this in a small place in Greenland, we need to be able to explain to the people that are going to run it and use it why they need it.
Embrey, please.
Yes, but and to echo that sentiment, this is part and parcel of why we had originally staged these digesters at a research institution, right? Because Zender Group is very adamant that we don't just drop something that we don't know anything about into a community and use that community to beta test it for us. And so that's why we need to probably find a place that is a bit more idealized so that we can do the appropriate scientific analysis to figure out if this really is a legitimate.
A place that is a bit more what? Could you repeat that?
Insulated and idealized, right? So like we are running a big pilot. We're running a big experiment. We don't want to put this in a village.
Right. Gotcha.
Where we're just kind of like, we're just going to see if this works. No, like we need to stage it as an experiment, collect data, and come to a conclusion about its efficacy and the context of its efficacy, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, Judith.
On that, sorry, there was a project originally. I don't know how far it's come on other fronts, but originally when I had been writing a project on this, the point was to put it in Dogtown, right, Pernille? It wouldn't have been in inhabited areas, it would have been tested, or building like a pilot house with the researcher in it, using it themselves, to see if it works in the climate, and then we would see what we would do with that. And there was interest for that project back then with the municipality and other people. So it could be started as something like this. We just need someone on site who agrees to do it. And then there was a question of, if we use dog poo, then does it work as well, or do we need a human there to feed it?
I guess I'll wrap Jasmine's comment here into a sort of a question for Jane, which is, we just got into a nice discussion about social factors, and I'm wondering how that's part of this grant. And I agree, Jasmine, that especially if it's part of this grant, then, and it should be anyhow, part of our discussion is we should be talking about that in our design or work group venue. That's my 2 cents on it. These social factors keep coming up, and what the hell is the point anyhow if it doesn't solve a real problem, and if there's no buy-in? It's a waste of time, and it's a black eye for this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a really good point that Pernille is bringing up, just because just for my own undergrad research and then working for Zender, moving into my PhD, that is something that I have come back to quite a bit. And I think that it would be a really good point to kind of just maybe dissect and brainstorm a little more about the community buy-in aspect, especially since we are trying to make the case for that it can work for communities in colder climates that are rural, like that community buy-in.
Sorry guys, I gotta disagree with that. We need a scientific foundation first. We don't have any idea. We don't know what the lens of the social issues to view through until we understand what the complexities of operation, the needs of operation, the time involved. Until we know those more objective metrics, I don't know that we have a great foundation to evaluate any social implications.
Well, can these things run in parallel somehow?
If they're funded, yes, but Jane also needs a quick fix of location, which is technically accessible, fits in with the group objectives, and we need to get on with it by the sound of things, because I didn't realize that this was in, well, it's a bit of a precipice for you, Jane, isn't it? Because you need to get on with this under the terms of the NATO funding. And I don't disagree with everything that's said in terms of social aspects and so on, but you do need two running parallel. One is the technical and scientific, and the other is the correct social location for demonstration of effectiveness. But right here and right now, Jane needs our support to, by the sound of things, to get things back on the ground, back working, and the science around it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, yeah. So if we have the funding to run this digester, the NATO project was really, I think the funding that they gave us is more for the scientific basis of this experiment. I mean, also it was written in the grant that this is like, a potential use for military installations so that it fits within NATO's goals, right? But I think, yeah, so this project, the only sort of social aspect that we take into consideration is that we have a section on like considering what types of feedstocks might be available in different types of locations within the Arctic. And that is kind of where the social aspects of it end. And definitely, of course, the social aspects are a really important part of it, but that isn't really something that we are directly aiming to solve with this project. Although maybe it's things we can sort of integrate alongside as additional factors. But I think, and I agree with Embrey that this needs to happen in a place where we have people in control. So, like a research institute or a research station or a university, some kind of location where, we're not, I don't think any of us want to dump this into a small community that's going to be left with this digester sitting there unused for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, not yet. No, I mean, by
No.
which I mean it's not into the community now under the current circumstances. I think Canada's the ideal candidate. I don't think it would be too difficult to convince the guys up at Aberdeen University, but it's a subarctic location that we have here. Canada
Yeah,
is
so
the
ideally we're looking for
obvious one.
Arctic locations, and there's a couple of possibilities that I can look into here.
Somebody
Well,
had their hand up, right?
yeah, that's me.
Judith, go
Michael, I
ahead.
think.
What about Svalbard? Do we have contacts there? I mean, it's definitely Arctic. There's a lot of scientific research going on.
Tom has contacts there for sure. Jane, you
Yeah,
have-
he's got some contacts there. And that would, so the one other issue with this, so NATO, Norway is a NATO member, so that would work as well.
It would be a little bit different because they are sewered, so and have piped water, so they have like wastewater running in pipes. So and it would be sort of at a larger scale. I don't see any problems in Sisimiut in Greenland, where we have our campus on getting feed from black water from households, because we have a few houses there that use the honey bucket toilets, and we have even more that have a tank. So we could easily probably get the entrepreneur emptying the tank to feed stuff into our digester. The issue is having someone watching over the digester. We have some staff up there, but not any permanent scientific staff. And if we want them to spend hours on this, I would need to supply a budget for that. It's not something I can just ask them to do.
So we don't have any permanent researcher anymore in Sisimiut.
Well, not anyone who are engaged with this topic, right? They have their own projects, so I can't just ask them to work on another project that they are not. I mean, they are busy doing their own PhDs.
I can also foresee problems of getting Colombian students into Greenland fairly soon as well, without opening a big political discussion. Isn't that going to cause, genuinely, we don't want to go down there, but is that not also an uncertainty that something like a Canadian site would help us with, that a Greenland location could be difficult in the coming months?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. But,
Let's pray.
but again, I'm looking after Jane's timetables here.
Yeah. So we don't want any unforeseen things happening. That's difficult currently.
Yep.
Are we at the point of knowing what a couple of feelers are and somebody being willing to put out those feelers? I'm a little bit losing track here of how we can start the ball rolling for Jane.
Yeah, so I have two groups of people that I think that I can contact. So literally, we had a NATO project meeting yesterday, and that's the first time we talked about this. So this is all new, right? There's two groups that I plan to reach out to and talk to. I'm also meeting with Tom tomorrow, so I can ask him about if he has any connections in Svalbard. And then Pernilla said she had a couple that she could reach out to as well.
I will reach out to University Laval and talk to them. But again, I don't really know whether they would also ask into the conditions. If would they then be responsible of building the digester, maintaining it, and we don't really have any economy in the project for this, right? So what would I tell them?
So I think we have quite a large budget for construction, and I think that when I was already talking with Annie about how we can budget for the subcontract, we were talking about taking some of that budget for a subcontract with NLR or whatever research location we were doing this at. So that would be one place. And I think part of the subcontract budget can be to have someone who is working on monitoring and like making sure that everything's fine. And then I think on top of that, the idea was to have some of the students and postdocs on the project go to the location and help with the actual construction and startup of the reactors.
And they wouldn't have to stay there full time while it runs?
No, so I think the idea would be they would be there for the construction and the startup, and then they would leave, and then hopefully there would be someone who's part of the subcontract who can like monitor things, or we can, you know, just making sure that everything's safe. And the idea would be that we would also have an uplink to the monitoring systems. Like we plan to have like a biogas monitor on the reactor to just like directly transmit the data, or if that's not possible, to have a person there manually transmitting the data to us.
That was a great description of the sort of the scope of it. And then there's two questions if I was in Pernilla's shoes, which is one, what's the budget? And two, are there people that can do it? So I think you're close. I mean, thank God you have a budget, and now, or you have a budget and you have a pretty good idea of the scope. Could people there do it, right? Do you have the right people, and is the budget adequate? Yeah, go ahead. Is somebody waving? Does somebody say something?
Yeah, Nate is leaving.
I'm taking off right in the middle of important things. Sorry, y'all. I drove to a reservation to give a presentation yesterday, and I have to go return this rental car for work. So
okay.
Thank you so much. And
charge to overhead, Nate, and stay.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That's probably true. All right. Well, maybe I'll stay. Maybe I'll stay. All right. Cheers.
I don't want to get you.
Another possible way, especially if it's in Canada, it might be possible to have someone who is, you know, technically employed by Simon Fraser University, but working in this, or at least, you know, part-time. If they work part-time at the research station with some job, but that we can pay part of their salary as a VIEW employee to be like monitoring the digesters.
But
that's harder if it's not in Canada, but easier if it's in Canada.
What kind of time requirement are we thinking for that person?
You know, I think it wouldn't be a lot. It would be like once everything is up and running. So for the construction and getting everything going, it might be a bit more intensive. But then I think once it's running, it would be pretty minor, just making sure that like there's no safety issues, making sure that the monitoring systems are working, potentially like shipping samples once in a while. And then once it freezes, sort of figuring out how to make sure that it's safe as it's frozen, so that it's not going to, you know, break the digester or anything like that.
So if we want to set samples, we need somebody who can easily access the place, right? Not somewhere where it's expensive to get to the location.
I mean, yeah, but I think in the Arctic, that's never super simple.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, for instance, Sisimiut would be easier because there is already a bunch of people there, rather than.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Kuujjuaq if it's Ulaval, for instance, but then they are in Quebec and then they have to fly up and down every time.
Yeah, so I was thinking exactly the same thing. I put the name of the research station here because I will not try to pronounce it. But I think, I mean, it's a research station, so it's a place where people fly in, do up some project, fly out again, and the staff that's there, I guess, are mostly like a janitor and a cook style staff. So I don't think there is permanent research staff there either. So that way, I think Sisimiut is both easier to get to and has more people. I mean, it's a town with more than 5,000 inhabitants, so we have some technical skills there.
So that sounds more reasonable, yeah.
Could we apply for extra budget to pay a student to have a student job? Or no?
Yeah.
You don't look happy about that, Embrey.
NATO. I mean, NATO. Our budget at our NATO budget, correct me if I'm wrong, but we maxed that sucker out.
Yeah, we can't ask for more money from NATO. There might be other projects that we could apply for. But...
Can we ask for someone else, somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But then I guess if we submit a grant proposal today, we usually wouldn't have the results back by the time we would need it. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Nate? Oh, Nate is gone.
So the places that I'm thinking of, so it sounds like maybe this research station in Nunavik is not great because it's not permanently staffed. The places I'm thinking about are in Inuvik, which is it's in the Northwest Territories. It's a permanent city or town there, I guess, and it has a research station that is mostly used in the summertime, but I think there is always people there, at least a few people there. And then the other place was in just outside of Whitehorse. There might be a place we can do it. So in the Yukon. The Yukon University has a few people that have done this kind of work before, and so some of them might be able to facilitate this kind of thing. And if anybody else has any ideas, happy to hear them.
I'll do a little email introduction to you and Stephanie McQuarrie at, I think, Cape Breton University. If anybody's heard of her, she does a fair amount of what's that, Embrey? You and your reactions. I can't even keep track. Never mind. So anyhow, she's pretty into this stuff, and she's now a dean. So she may have some pull to do something somewhere in Canada. Who knows? They may have some research stations somewhere, but you do want it nice and Arctic-y. So I'm going to just write you that. Yeah, I'll make you a nice little email, and you can explain it to her yourself.
Thanks, Alex.
So we're at 1 hour. I think we sort of covered our two topics, or more than an hour, covered our two topics in one, which is NATO grant and administration and coordination, all that stuff, and then these design groups. So I think we sort of took care of whatever assignments there were. My assignment I have here is that I will draft a summary of this for you, Jane, and Margaret, and Embrey, to describe it, and then I want you to review it, and then I'm going to send it out as, hey, our next meeting, we're going to talk about this, or go out the whole IRPIC list, and that will be one of then two notices. They'll get an invitation to the meeting then in a more timely fashion than I sent it this month, I hope, and that way we're sort of queuing up the interest on these work groups. However, that means somebody else is going to basically organize that work group meeting. So I'm sort of looking at you, Embrey and Jane, to have, be prepared to put us to work. Whoever's going to do these work group things for the first 45 minutes or an hour of our next meeting. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
Oh, and one other thing. So Stella, who's a master's student on the Project NATO website, and some of you have seen it because I sent you, if your name's on it, I sent you an email. But anyways, there's the website. So if you have any comments or suggestions or anything, you can have a look at that and let us know.
What is that? I'm sorry, this web Weebly thing, what is it?
This is the NATO project website.
It's not working.
Oh.
It says
Not
page
working?
found.
Let me see.
coldad.weebly.com.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong address. That's why it's not working.
NATO cold AD. Dig it.
Picture.
Oh, look at that. There we are. Many of us, that is.
Thank you, both of us. Yes.
Yeah. No, it was all good yesterday.
I think what I will do is, as part of my introductory email, of course, is now I have a website. How handy is that? And if people actually want that, I'm going to invite them to not just be there at the meeting for this specific thing, but I'm actually going to invite them if they really want to help organize it and run it, to talk to you, Jane or Embrey. So you may end up with some collaborators that are going to help you to run this. If not this first one, then the next one, or whatever you want. if they're pretty into it, then I think we should get them